Good evening. My name's Stephen Lewis. I'm in the class with you. This is my blog. This is my video blog for comparison of the South region to Midwest region, which is North Central Atlantic population comparison. For today's topic, we're going to examine the key aspects that stood out in the last discussion, namely migration patterns. We're going to discuss the migration patterns from 1870 to 1880 across two regions in the United States during the postbellum period, as I mentioned, the South and the Midwest. While putting together my last blog, I spent some time discussing the population distribution between urban and rural areas in Arkansas and Louisiana. But still, we spent most of our time examining crop yields at the beginning of the Reconstruction era, instead of spending a lot of time looking at the population. So we're going to do that today. When we discuss population in relation to the economy and migration patterns, we can tell the story of changing economies. While America began to transition from an agrarian society to an urban one in the early part of the century, the 19th century, the migration from rural to urban centers received a significant economic boost with the rise of factories and mills in cities after the war. But why don't we start by discussing the total population of each area, followed by breaking it down into cities, into migration pattern, and then the city population. We begin with the South region and compare 2 years of census data, 1870 and 1880. In 1870, the population was 12,288,020, with whites making up 7,863,209, or 64% of the total population, while colored made up 4,420,811, or 36% of the total population in 1870. In 1880, the population was 16,516,568, representing a 34% increase from 1870. Whites comprised 10,555,427, or 64% of the total population, while blacks made up 5,953,903, or 36% of the total population. Now let's turn our attention to the population of the Midwest region. Again, this is the North Central, Maryland, Washington, D.C., Delaware, that area. In 1870 and 1880. In 1870, the population, now this is 4 years into Reconstruction, 12,981,111, with whites comprising 12,698,503, or 98% of the total population, while blacks made up 273,080, or 2% of the total population. In 1880, the population was 17,364,111, representing a 34% increase from 1870. Whites comprised 16,961,423, or 98% of the total population, while blacks made up 385,621, or 2% of the total population. So the percentages didn't change, but the population went up. And we're going to see that when we look at the cities here in a minute. Now that we have established the population of both regions, let's examine the shift in population from rural to urban. There are numerous ways to study population growth in each area. Woodman, in his article Sequel to History, says masses of the white population in the South who never owned slaves were also undergoing a momentous process of social change to which they had little experience. Hill country whites, who had been largely self-sufficient yeomen, were being transformed into commercial farmers. We see this migration clearly when we examine the density map of 1880 as published by the Department of the Interior, which shows that the large population in the South is centered between Montgomery, Alabama, and Atlanta, Georgia area in the southern region. But we see it even stronger when we look at the cities. Finally, we are going to look at the migration patterns from 1870 through 1880 by comparing Baltimore, Charleston, Memphis, Mobile, Philadelphia, and Washington, D.C. Baltimore, Maryland in 1870 had 267,354. In 1880, Baltimore had 332,313. That is an increase over 10 years of 24%. Charleston in 1870 had 48,956. And in 1880, Charleston had 49,984, a change of 2%, an increase of 2%. Memphis, Tennessee had 40,226. Memphis had 33,592 in 1880, a decrease of 17%. Mobile, Alabama had 32,034 population, and in 1880 they had 29,132. Philadelphia had 674,022, and Philadelphia in 1880 had 847,170, 26% increase. And finally, Washington, D.C. had 109,199, and in 1880 they had 147,293, 35% increase. So we can see that the migration pattern held, and the migration was moving north. Thank you. Have a good evening.